The sea looked like hammered bronze at dawn, each slow wave glimmering beneath a pale kiss of fire, stretching from horizon to horizon. Jon Snow stood at the prow of the Swan Wing, with the wind clawing at his dark hair, and the salt making faint white webs upon his lips. Longclaw rested in its plain leather sheath against the small of his back, and Ghost, thick-furred and silent, balanced with uncanny poise beside him. The wolf's red eyes never left the shifting water, as though he hunted something beneath the skin of the world. Behind them, the rest of the little fleet, 6 cogs and a battered war galley they'd named Maiden's Fury, struggled to keep pace. Black sails patched with gray flapped tiredly, and wooden hulls groaned under the weight of timber, horses, grain, and the handful of hard-eyed souls who had chosen exile and impossible dreams over the tattered peace Jon had left behind in the north. Every man and woman aboard believed the risk of sailing the smoking sea worth the promise waiting past it. A new start far from Westeros' shallow graves and treacherous thrones. A chance to do some lasting good, perhaps, before the stranger claimed them. Jon told himself he believed the same, though each rolling mile on this ghost-haunted water birthed fresh doubts in his chest. Maester Samwell Tarly, his cheeks wind-burned and his spectacles forever sliding down his broad nose, joined Jon at the rail. "There," Sam murmured, pointing past the Swan Wing's carved swan-head figure. A ragged smear of darkness broke the dawn, far distant yet taller than any cliff Jon had seen. Smoke wreathed its jagged heights, drifting like funeral gauze. A faint reddish glow pulsed deep within that veil, as though the land itself still remembered dragonfire. Valyria. A chill slithered beneath Jon's brigandine despite the warmth of the eastern sun. He had fought White Walkers in the frozen wastes beyond the wall, had faced Daenerys Dragon in King's Landing's ash-clogged streets. Yet here, now, in sight of a realm long dead, he felt smaller than he ever had. The doom had come nearly 4 centuries ago, but the very name still carried a hush. Whole mountains had cracked, rivers had turned to steam, and the proudest empire the world had ever known had been buried beneath boiling seas and razor-edged obsidian. Men still whispered that the doom had not ended, that sorcery lingered where 14 fiery peaks once crowned the freehold, and that the wind itself could melt steel if a sailor lingered too long in its sigh. Sam lifted a trembling hand to his brow. "The charts we found at Old Town say there's a safe channel, if we can keep the Red Peak to port and the Broken Arch to starboard." "Safe," Jon echoed. Ghost's ears flattened at the word, as though the wolf recognized a lie when he heard one. Yet this had been Jon's choice. After the long night, after the blood-slicked chaos of the south, and the uneasy peace that followed, he had ridden from Winterfell with neither crown nor claim. The North would remember him as a kinslayer, if it remembered him at all. Bran's quiet decree of exile had been a mercy. Jon had gone to Castle Black in silence, Ghost padding at his heel. And for a time he had believed the wall might soothe old wounds. But each dawn had brought only restlessness. The sense that he had been spared for a purpose yet unrealized gnawed at him, louder than the ravens in their towers. It was Tyrion Lannister, of all men, who had named that purpose. Over a flagon of rough red in the ruin of King's Landing, the Lion of Lannister, stunted in limb but forever cunning of mind, had traced Valyria's smoking outline in the dust. The world needs more than broken castles and forgiven sins. "Snow," he'd said, eyes glinting over the rim of his cup. "It needs hope, and there are seeds buried in ash that only fools or heroes would dare water." Jon had never thought himself either, but the words burrowed deep. Nights later, in a dream stinking of ash and shadow, he saw an obsidian throne rising from molten stone, saw Ghost broad-shouldered beside a trio of young dragons, and a people kneeling in a half-circle, spears grounded in silent fealty. When the dawn broke, Jon knew he would sail south and east, not north of the wall. And so here they were, Jon, Sam, Davos Seaworth at the wheel of Maiden's Fury, Asha Greyjoy commanding the lean raiding cog Night Reaver, and perhaps 200 men and women drawn from every kingdom. Sellsword sniffing a fortune, red priests, hunting prophecy, broken lords seeking lands untouched by the sprawl of old wars. Some followed Jon out of gratitude, others for their own secrets, but none doubted the man who had plunged a dagger into the mad dragon queen to save King's Landing. Even those who still whispered Daenerys' name like a prayer admitted Jon Snow had changed the world once. If the ruins of Valyria could be tamed, perhaps he could do so again. The swan wing tilted on a trough. Ghost's lips peeled back from white teeth, a low growl catching the wind. Jon squinted across the swells. Something rippled just below the surface. Long, pale, monstrous. It vanished as quickly as it came. Sam swallowed hard. Not a dragon? Jon shook his head. Dragons were creatures of air and flame. He doubted even Vhagar, mightiest of the beasts Aegon the Conqueror had ridden, could have swum so deep. But he remembered the tales of the Blackwater Kraken, of leviathans large enough to swallow galleys whole. Valyria bred its horrors in ancient vaults and deep tides. The doom had not slain them all. "Signal Davos," Jon said. "Titan formation, and have the archers ready flaming arrows." They passed the red peak by midday. Columns of smoke rose in slow, mournful spirals from cracks seamed along its ridges. At dusk, the broken arch appeared. Two towering pillars of fused black stone, remnants of some bridge that had once spanned the bay. The water between them lay unnervingly still, mirror-slick and dark as ink. No gulls cried overhead. No fish leaped in silver flashes. The crews worked in silence, breath frosting despite the warmth. Jon could almost feel eyes press upon the hulls. Some watchful presence older than men, waiting for trespassers. Hours later, at the heart of night, torches spattered red light upon the decks as the first ruins slid from the fog. Half-sunken colonnades jutted like broken ribs from the shallows. Fallen marble gods lay face down in black sand. Here and there, shattered domes still glimmered with veins of gold. Beyond them, on a patch of higher ground shielded by a ring of basalt cliffs, stood the skeleton of a great citadel. Its towers, once bright with dragonbone buttresses, had collapsed inward, yet a single central keep remained. Its upper halls blasted away, but its base stout as a fortress of winter-hardened ice. Jon ordered the anchors, dropped in a sheltered inlet rimmed with oily mist. Lanterns bobbed across the water as skiffs glided shoreward. Ash drifted in thin, ghostly threads, settling upon cloaks and oars alike. The air reeked of sulfur and something sweeter. A perfume of charred orchids carried upon volcanic breath. Ghost bounded ahead, paws crunching on black gravel. They built no fire that first night. Sam and a half-dozen archers stood watch upon the strand, while Jon, Davos, Asha, and a wildling spearwife named Thera crept toward the looming keep, scouting with hooded lanterns. Their boots slapped on molten-fused paving stones, once polished as mirrors, now crazed with cracks that glowed sullen red. Inside, they found a hall wide enough to swallow Winterfell's great keep thrice over. Pillars of obsidian soared to join a ceiling lost in darkness, and everywhere the walls bore faint reliefs of serpents and dragons knotted around fiery runes. Yet, no burn mark, no skeleton, no shattered thing moved here. It felt not abandoned, but expectant, as though the hall's true masters had merely stepped outside. Asha whistled low. If the Greghoys had a place like this, the Iron Islanders would swear we'd stolen the throne of every god. Davos touched one carved serpent with awe. Half the marble caverns beneath Dragonstone looked like this once, but never so alive. Jon turned his lantern upward. In the center of the hall lay a dais, 6 steps high, carved from fused stone. A crude approximation of a throne platform, its edges rough, unpolished. The chair that crowned it, however, gleamed. A seat forged of interlaced steel and glassy black rock, its arms shaped as worm heads, its high back flaring like a dragon's outstretched wings. No dust lay upon it. No scuffs marred its surface. Jon's pulse quickened. He had seen the Iron Throne. A twisted beast of swords welded by Balerian's flame. That relic of conquest looked jagged, cruel, a warning. This chair felt different, sleeker, almost elegant. But how could anything so pristine survive centuries in ruins? Theron knelt beside the dais, pressing a palm to the cool stone. "Feel that," she whispered. Jon crouched. The fused floor thrummed. Faint, rhythmic, like a giant's distant heartbeat. "Mother's mercy," Davos breathed. "This place is alive." Sam hurried inside, catching his breath. "Jon," he called softly. "You should see this." They followed him through a side archway into what must once have been some high lord's private gallery. Half the marble balcony had fallen away, but from the remaining parapet Jon gazed down into a vast caldera flooded with starlight and red glow from magma trenches. Upon its far rim, 3 of the 14 legendary volcanoes, now half-sunken cousins of their former glory, spat slow fans of ember into the night. Between them sprawled streets of blackened bones of buildings, plazas cracked by vines of obsidian, and rivulets of orange lava coursing like serpents under charred bridges. Yet amid that desolation, pale shapes coiled and uncoiled. Dark wings stirred. Sulphurous vapors lit silver from dancing fires. Dragons. Tau. Fewer than a dozen. Some perhaps no larger than horses, others broad-shouldered as war elephants. But dragons nonetheless, alive and wild. One perched upon an arch half-melted, its hide a shimmer of blue and gold. Another, coal-black, beat wings across a bubbling stream and shrieked at the rising sparks. Jon's heart stuttered. He had felt Rhaegal's muscles beneath him during the battle on the frozen lake, had smelled the lightning stink of Viserion's blue fire, had witnessed Drogon's roar turn stone soft in King's Landing. But seeing these untamed creatures here, far from any rider, awakened something fierce and forgotten in his blood. Sam spoke first. The doom didn't kill them all. It only freed them. Them? Jon looked out at the caldera, at the broken city waiting in patient ruin, at the dragons prowling ancient streets like restless gods. He felt Longclaw's familiar weight pull gently at his belt, and Ghost's fur brush his knee. And in that moment he understood Tyrion's whisper. The seeds are in the ash. If dragons lived, so did hope. Morning came indistinguishable from night, the sky a smother of gray cloud and ash-thin mist. Jon's company established a base in the citadel's lower vaults, choosing chambers whose stone had cooled sufficiently to walk without boots scorching. Sam documented every carving and corridor with the fervor of a monk before a holy relic. Davos organized watch rotations, knowing every ruin could hide death. Asha set her Ironborn to mapping the shoreline, hunting safe moorings, and scouring wrecks for usable timber. Jon spent his hours in restless patrol. He strode along crumbling promenades where statues of dragonlords looked down with chipped hypocrisy. He traced the edges of mosaic floors so vibrant they could have been laid yesterday. He climbed a flayed scaffolding of stairs that led to a balcony, from which the Freehold's masters once gazed upon their empire of fire and blood. And everywhere, he found signs that the doom had not merely boiled stone and sea. It had folded time. Holes slagged through marble bore runes shimmering faint silver, alive with power older than memory. Veins of fused crystal pulsed when he neared, brightening like hearth embers given breath. He almost imagined the city itself watching, weighing him, deciding whether he was a conqueror or a steward. 3 days into their occupation, a scouting party returned breathless. They had discovered an aquifer 20 fathoms beneath the citadel, its water bitterly warm but fresh. That same evening, 2 of Asha's archers staggered back from a foray past the caldera rim, with sacks full of obsidian spears and jars. Uncorked, they released faint lavender smoke that smelt of blossoms and brimstone. Jon convened his council in the great hall by torchlight. The dais loomed behind him. He refused to sit upon the throne-shaped thing until he understood what it meant. They gathered at a long stone table salvaged from a side chamber. Sam, Davos, Asha, Thera, the Red Priest Mokoro draped in wine-dark robes, and Ser Jorah Mormont, gaunt and silver-bearded, who had come south to seek atonement for sins Jon believed long paid. Asha thumped her fist on the table. 17 dragons, Snow, she said, voice husky with excitement. Sam counted them from the parapet at dusk. 17. Even half-grown, had as a force fit to shake the world. If we capture a handful, The stepstones will fall like rotten planks. Volantis lies. They'd bend the knee for a glimpse of fire. Many. Jon met her gaze. And who would ride them? She grinned. We can learn. Mokoro's deep voice rolled like thunder. Only those with blood bound to the old sorceries may sit a dragon without perishing in flame. He eyed Jon with unsettling certainty. Some of you carry such blood. The night shows your lineage in the shimmer of your souls. Yora cleared his throat. Whether we ride dragons or not, we must first survive here. The ruins may feed us for a moon or two, but the land beyond... He shook his head. There are no farms. Volcanic ash poisons soil. Hunting parties report little game. Sam adjusted his spectacles. Yet the obsidian spears we found were stored fresh, in racks free of dust. Someone's been using them recently. He opened a scroll map he had sketched. See these marks? Caverns along the southern ridge. Perhaps tribes have made homes there. Jon studied the crude ink lines. Every unknown pocket posed both threat and opportunity. We will send envoys. Speak first before drawing steel. If there are folk here, they may welcome trade with us. Salt, cloth, grain, for knowledge of the land. And now, Davos drummed calloused fingers on the stone. Aye, but we must show strength. Rumor of dragons alone may keep blades in their sheaths, but rumor paired with truth. A shriek cut through the hall. The torches quivered. Ghost bounded toward the entrance with a snarl. Jon drew Longclaw instinctively. They burst into the courtyard. Spirals of embers danced upon a sudden furnace wind. A dragon, small, bronze-scaled, barely larger than a warhorse, had landed upon a toppled column not 20 paces away. Its wings beat, stirring ash. Yellow eyes, slitted and intelligent, fixed upon the humans. Everyone froze. Jon tasted smoke on his tongue. The creature cocked its head, nostrils flaring. It did not roar. It regarded them with something like curiosity. Ghost stepped forward, hackles bristling. The dragon's pupils narrowed. Jon swallowed. If the wolf lunged, this would become slaughter in an instant. Easy, Jon whispered. He sheathed Longclaw slowly and knelt, palms open. No sudden movements. Let it see, we are not threat. His breath felt loud. The dragon's gaze flicked to him. Its wings folded halfway. Sam murmured a prayer to every god he knew. Asha gripped a short spear but remained still. Jon felt the strange heartbeat through the stone again, thrumming faster, in time with his own pounding pulse. He did not know if this was magic or only fear, yet he trusted it. He closed his eyes, inhaled the heated air, and remembered standing before Rhaegal on a windswept cliff at Dragonstone. How the green beast had lowered its muzzle and allowed him to touch warm scales. He remembered Viserian's ruined corpse beyond the wall, and the agony he'd felt as though losing a brother. Somehow, the sensation returned. The ache and the wonder. When he opened his eyes, the bronze dragon had slipped from the column onto all fours. Steam hissed between its teeth. Slowly, inexorably, it padded forward until the tip of its snout hovered a handspan from Jon's chest. Jon did not flinch. He lifted a tentative hand, paused. The dragon exhaled and leaned in. His palm pressed to a warm scale just shy of blistering heat. A tremor rippled through the creature. Half warning, half welcome. Jon's stomach twisted with euphoria and terror. A crack sounded. Someone gasping aloud. The dragon's head jerked toward the noise. Its wings flared. Asha had shifted her spear unconsciously. The iron tip scraped stone. It was enough. The dragon lashed its tail, sending broken masonry skittering. A thunderous beat of wings and it soared skyward. An incandescent bronze shadow, spiraling into the gray. Embers rained upon the courtyard stones. Silence crashed down like snowfall. Davos let out a long breath. 7. Save us. Mokoro's red-rimmed eyes glittered. The creature tasted your blood in the air, Jon Snow. It recognized kinship. Sam's voice quavered. If even a fledgling approaches you so willingly, what might the elder worms do? Jon rose, palm throbbing with heat. He stared up at the empty sky. The answer frightened and thrilled him in equal measure. Over the following fortnight, the fleet's cramped hulls disgorged lumber, sheep pens, seed grain and iron tools onto the black beaches. The ruins nearest the citadel slowly transformed. Splintered pillars became way markers. Courtyards cleared of debris housed tents and cookfires. The Red Priest Mokoro and his acolytes painted runes of protection in ash white upon lintels and archways. Whether they held true power or merely comforted the fearful, Jon let them. Every evening, council convened atop the dais beneath the silent throne. Reports sharpened. The aquifer could supply fresh water for 1,000 souls. Sulfuric springs closer to the eastern ridge birthed crystal lattices rich with minerals unknown to Westeros. Obsidian, the dragonglass men once mined on Dragonstone, could be chipped here in slabs as large as coffin lids. The settlement needed a name. Something beyond camp or base. Some suggested New Valyria, others Dragon's Rest. Jon said little. Names would come later when the land itself embraced them. Yet still, he hesitated to sit the throne. Each night he gazed upon it, feeling that same pulse throbbing beneath the fused floor, as though the city waited for a rightful hand. He feared presumption. He feared prophecy. But above all, he feared rushing what must be slow-grown if it were to last. On the 23rd day, scouts failed to return from the southern caverns. Asha led a rescue party. They found broken spears, blood spattered upon basalt, and footprints shaped like talons, yet no bodies. The trackers spoke of great shadows moving atop lava-lit ridges. The next dawn, a low scream echoed across the caldera, fading as suddenly as it began. Tension thickened. Some men muttered of the wrath of the doom awakened by trespass. Others urged Jon to claim the throne and bind the dragons so they might strike first. Jon refused. He ordered torches and armored watches. He ordered patience. 3 nights later, as black lightning danced within a distant storm, the enemy revealed itself. Bells clanged from the shoreline. Jon raced from his chambers, sword naked in his hand, Ghost snarling at his flank. Warriors bearing spears of red obsidian and shields etched with gleaming runes poured from cracks in cliff faces. Silent as smoke, their skin, when torchlight caught it, glittered faintly. Not paint, but a dusting of volcanic glass fused into flesh. Their eyes glowed ember red, as though fire burned behind the pupils. They moved in disciplined silence. No war cries, no trumpets. Just the whir of obsidian blades, and the soft hiss of ash underfoot. Jon's archers loosed arrows. Sparks burst as shafts splintered against those glassy shields. A wildling fell with his throat sliced open, the wound smoking. Jon waded into the fray. Longclaw cleaved an obsidian spearhead. The thing shattered into black snow. Ghost lunged at a warrior's leg, dragging him down. Blood sprayed, yet the foe pushed forward, heedless of pain. Sam clutched a short sword, terror wide in his eyes, but determination steeling his arm. Davos, grizzled and grim, fought back-to-back with a former Dornish sellsword. Through the chaos, Jon noticed their attackers never spoke. Their mouths worked, lips parting, yet no sound emerged except the breathing hiss of furnace bellows. Perhaps their tongues had been cut, or perhaps speech seemed unnecessary to creatures forged of living flame. A horn blast sounded from the citadel's high parapet, Asha's signal. Jon risked a glance. Night Reaver's ballista pivoted upon the seawall. Torches ignited pitch-soaked bolts. Asha herself pulled the release. The bolt screamed across the courtyard, striking a cluster of glass-skinned warriors. They erupted in shards, pieces tinkling like broken bottles upon stone. The tide turned. Yet the foe did not retreat. They fought until the last obsidian figure shattered, until wind blew their remains into swirling dust. When the silence finally settled, Jon counted 36 of his own dead. Twice that lay strewn in glittering fragments. Mokoro knelt amid the carnage. fingers probing a shard. His frown deepened. "Not men," he said gravely. "Husks. Shells shaped by sorcery, animated by the heat that still hungers in the veins of this land. They are guardians." Sam coughed, wiping blood from his temple. "Guardians of what?" Jon looked toward the darkness beyond the reach of torches, toward the dormant throne in the hall behind him. He thought he knew. The city was testing them, testing him. Each day they lingered without claiming what the freehold left behind. The land birthed new challenges to measure their worth. Davos sheathed his blood-slick blade. "If those things were but scouts, we must fortify before the next onslaught." "No." Jon's voice surprised even himself. "We end this by dawn." Sam's eyes widened. "What are you planning?" Jon scrubbed a bloody hand through his hair, suddenly weary. "The city wants a master. Until it has one, it will keep sending horrors." He looked toward the entrance of the great hall, where torchlight flickered like dragonfire against the stone. "I will give it what it wants." He walked across blood-wet stones, Ghost limping beside him, up the dais steps. The strange throne waited, shadowed and silent. Jon turned to face his people. Those who remained had followed him across half the world. They deserved a choice now. "I did not ask for your faith," he said, voice raw. "I asked for time. Time to see if this broken city could become a home." "Tonight," it answered. "It will not let us settle until it knows who leads." He took a breath. "I am a snow, a bastard, an oath-breaker. Yet every step I have taken led me here. If any among you doubts I should claim this seat, speak now." No one spoke. Even the dying lay silent. Ghost tilted his great white head, muzzle streaked red, and stared with those burning eyes, as though willing Jon onward. Jon turned. He lowered himself upon the throne. Stone met flesh. The heartbeat under the floor convulsed. One thunderous pulse, then another. Heat flooded the hall. The torches flared green, then blue, then a deep, living red. Jon's vision swam. For one impossible instant, he felt wings of molten light unfurl behind him, vast enough to cloud the stars. A name, ancient and terrible, whispered in tongues long dead. And then the heat subsided. The hall steadied. The pulse beneath the stone settled into a steadier, quieter rhythm. One he felt match his own. Jon Snow sat upon the throne of dragons, the sound of his breath filling the vast chamber. And for the first time since the long night ended, he felt utterly, undeniably certain of his path. Outside, beyond shattered gates and high basalt walls, a roar rose, louder than bells, louder than thunder. Dragons pealed from the sky, called by some wordless summons, their cries merging into a symphony of fire and storm. The world trembled beneath the wings of a reborn age. Jon closed his eyes, feeling the throne's warmth seep through him, remembering a time he had knelt in snow and mud, and begged to be worthy of a crown. He opened them, gazed upon the torches that now burned with steady gold, and spoke only 3 words, soft yet unbreakable. "It begins here. Ka. It begins here." The words hung in the heat like ash that could not fall, as though time itself paused to consider them. Jon felt the silence lengthen, pressing against the arches, pressing against his heart. Then the dragons answered. One after another, they wheeled above the citadel, sketching spirals of ember across the sky. Their roars merged into a single seismic chant that rattled the flagstones and shook dust from ancient carvings. Those on the courtyard who had survived the night's assault fell to one knee almost as a single body. Sellswords and nobles, ironborn and wildlings. The red priests and the maimed and the fearful, an instinct older than crowns guiding them. Ghost padded to the foot of the dais, raised his muzzle to the vaulted dark, and let out a low answering howl. Its echo tangled with dragon song, beast and myth acknowledging the man who bridged their worlds. Jon's palm still burned where it had touched the bronze hatchling. The heat had seeped through flesh and sinew, and now lay in the marrow. A lodger that would never leave. He rose slowly from the throne, and the pulse beneath the floor kept time with his heartbeat. His voice carried without strain. as if the stone lent him strength. "Raise our dead," he said, "treat our wounded, and set no guard tonight. The city itself will keep vigil." No one questioned him, not because of fear, but because the halls themselves seemed to approve. The blue-green torches remained steady, unblinking eyes in the dark. The red priest Mokoro lowered his hooded head. Even Asha, who had never bent her knee to storm or throne, bowed it now. They tended the dead dawn onward. The guardians' glassy shards blew away on the morning wind, leaving only small pools where their molten blood had cooled into obsidian beads. Jon walked among the wounded with Sam and Jorah, listening, encouraging, laying hand to brow. Perhaps it was only the comfort of command, but some fevered eyes cleared at his touch, some bleeding slowed. Davos watched, chewing a sprig of dried mint, and muttered something about Stannis and Shadowborn kings. Yet there was no bitterness in his weathered face, only wonder. That same afternoon the dragons landed. First the bronze, gliding down like a falling leaf to the plaza below the high keep. Jon stood still, palms open, heart deafening, while the beast folded its sails of hammered light. Another dragon followed, a green dappled female scarcely larger than a bear, then a blue sleek and serpentine, then two blacks, siblings in darkness. By sundown 9 dragons sprawled beneath crumbling colonnades, wings tucked, gold eyes sliding half shut as if content. Stinks of sulfur and musk rolled through the courtyards. Not one stirred in hostility. Sam made a careful tally from the parapet. 9 here, 8 more on the far rim. 17, again, as I counted. They choose to stay within a league of you now. He pushed his spectacles higher. Jon, this is unrecorded history. Jon traced the bronze's crest with his gaze. It's only the beginning. That night he dreamed. He stood upon a bridge of shimmering scales that arched across an ocean of molten gold. A woman in shadow waited at the far end. He knew her face, and yet it changed with every heartbeat. Arya Ygritte Daenerys Lyanna. When he tried to speak her name, fire filled his throat, and the bridge cracked beneath him. He fell through darkness, but before the dream sea swallowed him, he heard a hidden hearth beating somewhere below. Immense and patient. He woke before dawn beside the throne, ghosts curled at his feet. Sam dozed on a stone bench. Mokoro knelt chanting softly. Jon pushed to his feet, blood thick with heat that never left now, and walked into the hushed corridors. In a rotunda north of the keep, he found Thera and 3 wildlings prying at a bronze door, half fused shut. Since the doom, they stepped aside, eyes bright. Jon set both hands to the warm metal. The hinges groaned like a thing rousing from centuries' sleep, and the slab slid open on a breath of steam. Beyond lay a library. Not the rubble that had choked so many Valyrian vaults. This place had endured, perhaps shielded by spells burned into every block. Shelves of black walnut lined the walls, each scroll sealed in crystal tubes. A stone lectern stood central, bearing an oblong slab of obsidian etched with swirling glyphs. Sam forgot to breathe when he arrived. His fingers hovered above the slab. Jon, this is High Valyrian, but older, like Valyrian before Valyria. He swallowed. Give me time and ink, and I will crack it. Take whatever you need, Jon answered. During the days that followed, his settlement, Asha had begun calling it Heartflame, learned to live with dragons overhead, and a living city beneath. The aquifer was tapped by copper pump shafts, scavenged from a fallen foundry. Warm water fed terraced cisterns that steamed gently in the cool ash-drizzled air. Seeds sprouted in troughs of volcanic loam, coaxed by Sam's careful ratios of mineral dust. Red priest acolytes tended braziers beside the chutes, murmuring hymns to Raelor and claiming the fire god's breath quickened growth. 7 weeks after Jon took the throne, the first hatchling emerged from an egg found in a half-collapsed nursery high on the slope of the western spur. It was no larger than a lapdog, scales the color of midnight garnets. The creature shrilled at the lantern light until Jon wrapped it in a soot-stained cloak. Then it cooed and nipped his thumb. Blood welled. The hatchling licked it once and fell asleep. Named already, are you? Jon whispered. Sleep, little cinder. Sam bent willingly over the ancient slab and scrolls. working until his shoulders cramped and the ink turned watery. He discovered a recurring sigil. A three-headed dragon breathed from a single blazing mountain, encircled by words that read, when pieced together, Zaldra Zinogar, Dragon of the Heart. Beneath lay narrower runes, older still. Azantes Urvoas, which Sam rendered as King Forged of Ash. He brought the translation to John one starlit evening. The freehold expected a ruler returned from ruin, he said, voice trembling with scholarly awe. Not a Valyrian reborn, but something new, fire-tempered in the North's chill. They left the throne waiting, they left guardians to test the claim, and they left knowledge to guide the rebirth. Then, John traced the words with a calloused finger. Knowledge of what? Of everything they were. Sam said, gesturing at the endless shelves. And of what they feared. Beyond this library lies a second crypt, sealed by 7 wards. The glyphs warn of a flame that devours even stone. Mokoro, listening from the balustrade, nodded. The heart of fire. Some in Ashai whisper of it. A slumbering spark of the first flame the world knew. Valyria built its empire around that heart. When they lost control, the doom followed. Mentrau. John turned the weight of possibility over and over in his mind. A power that fed on the living land, a power now pulsing in subtle rhythm with his blood. He thought of the beat beneath the throne, of the dragons lying docile in courtyards, of the guardians that had buckled before Longclaw's edge. If that heart still burned below the city, it would demand more of him than conquest. 2 moons waxed and waned. Heart Flame's palisades rose along the seaward side, built from blackened cedar salvaged from wrecks, and lashed with copper strapping hammered from roof tiles. The night reaver slipped among shattered piers to fish, its decks festooned with rust-red nets. Asha drilled her ironborn in spear formations. Davos saw to ration tallies and sail repair. Mokoro's followers carved narrow sluice channels that carried molten ore from vent fissures to crude molds, forging short blades of Valyrian bright metal that cooled almost weightless in the hand. Yet the threat of the glass guardians did not abate. Each attack came without warning. Shapes uncoiling from shadow like living shards, driven by some mindless imperative to test the settlers' resolve. They shattered on Dragonfire now. John needed only raise a hand, and the bronze drake he had named Balefire would swoop, exhaling green-gold flame that melted the attackers to bubbling puddles. Still, each battle cost lives. Jorah Mormont, scarred and weary, approached John with a grim proposal. The Guardians come from somewhere deep, he said. Scouts track their prince to a fissure east of the caldera, but it plunges beyond torchlight. Let me lead a company down and silence whatever spawns them. And no. John hesitated. If the hearth below is woken, you may find more than glass warriors. All the more reason, Jorah insisted. Better to face the unknown on our terms. John granted it. Jorah descended the fissure with 30 seasoned fighters, obsidian-tipped spears, and freshly forged heart-steel swords glimmering. 3 days later, 5 returned, half-blinded by ember flares, armor runneled with acid burn. Jorah was not among them. They spoke of a cavern like the inside of a giant's ribcage, where molten veins dripped from the roof and pillars of glass grew like trees. In the center throbbed a crystal egg large as a market square, crimson light strubbing within. At its base, guardians coalesced out of the melt, shaping limbs and blades as they crawled forth. They never ceased forming, as though a single will shaped infinite vessels. John listened in silence. He felt the heat in his bones answered the description, an old heartbeat quickening. Jorah's fate twisted inside him like a dull blade, but grief could come later. That night, he summoned Sam, Mokoro, Davos, and Asha to the dais. No other counsel would suffice. The torches burned steady red gold. This heart beneath us births weapons without end, John said. We cannot outfight it. We must claim it, tame it, or seal it forever. Asha's blue eyes flicked to the vaulted ceiling. Can it be slain? Slice an egg, beast eyes. Mokoro's voice boomed softly. "Aim that old is not slain. It is bargained with or it consumes." Sam laid scrolls on the stone between them. The glyphs speak of a rite of binding, a second tempering. The Ashen King must face the heart, must prove will stronger than fire. Davos shifted his weight, one hand on his sword pommel. "And if the fire's stronger, then the doom begins again," Sam whispered. Silence circled them like a carrion bird. Jon stared at Longclaw's pale pommel, the snarling wolf. "I faced the Night King with dragonglass, faced Daenerys with love turned to ash. I will face this too." "No," Asha said sharply. "Not alone. I'll follow." She touched the axe at her belt. Mokoro added, "Our lore forges destiny in flame. Where the king walks, the priest must bear witness." Sam adjusted his spectacles. "And someone must record what transpires, so the world may learn." Jon could not help a faint smile. "Then we go together." The descent began on the 17th day of the third moon. Mokoro led with a staff tipped by a dragonglass lantern whose light burned crimson without wick or oil. Sam followed, clutching wax-sealed tablets and quills. Asha carried twin axes of heartsteel. Davos bore a kite shield glossed in obsidian dust. Balefire glided overhead until the fissure narrowed, then perched on a basalt spire to watch. Jon went first down the rope ladder, ghosting ahead, footfalls silent on glassy stone despite the burn of heat seeping through each rung. The air thickened with the smell of forge and lightning. Veins of molten ore traced the walls, lighting their path. Occasionally they passed humanoid forms half-born from the rock. A shoulder, a hand clutching a yet unshaped blade, a face featureless as smoothed glass. None moved. Jon could not tell if they slumbered or waited. Hours dragged. The crevasse wound like a wormhole through the earth. At last the ladder ended on a ledge overlooking a cavern vast as an inland sea. Its ceiling arched 100 yards above, studded with stalactites that dripped shining globes of magma. In the center lay the crystal egg. It rose on a broad pedestal of fused stone, its surface faceted like a dragon's eye, each facet pulsing. The red light within throbbed so slowly it might have been the breath of mountains. Guardians prowled the platform, scores of them, each born perfect and whole, then striding away to lurk against the walls where molten light gilded their edges. They did not attack. They watched. Mokoro lifted his staff. The obsidian lantern flared brilliant. Glyphs etched in white fire circled the priest's wrists, and he began to chant in Valyrian older than summer. The guardians parted, making a path to the pedestal. Jon led the way, feeling the air grow heavier with every step. Ghost padded at his side until the wolf whimpered, ears flattening, and would go no farther. Jon stroked his fur, whispered thanks, and walked on. Closer, the egg was not glass but something stranger. Layers of translucent flame captured in hard shape, folding inward like petals of a star. Heat battered him, yet did not burn. He laid both hands to the shell. A hum deep as wind through canyon bones filled his chest. "You are forged." The thought was not words, but sensation. Old as creation. Jon glimpsed other hearts beating. Nen's, steadfast as winter's root. Ygritte's, wild as summer thunder. Daenerys burning blue-white with unspent dreams. He felt chains clatter, swords fall, children laugh. He felt snow melt on stone eggs, felt ghost race under Borealis, felt icicles drip seawater on the prow of a salmon-painted ship. Every moment he had lived, lives he had touched, lives that would spring from his choices, all braided together. "Show me." The heart pulsed. Jon opened himself, not by words, but by offering doubt, guilt, hope. The long night on the wall, the silence of the crags beyond the world's edge, the shiver when Longclaw had pierced the woman he loved. The cavern flashed blinding white. When vision bled back, Jon stood on a plain of black sand beneath a sky where stars whirled like sparks in a forge. Before him towered a man whose form shifted. Once armored in Valyrian steel, once cloaked in wolf pelt, once crowned in ice. Its eyes were molten stone. What do you seek? The figure thundered without sound. To redeem what fire and ice have broken. Jon answered, voice cracking but unafraid. To give the world a land not built on the bones of slaves. To show my people a future. What price? My life if need be, but not my soul. The figure raised a hand. Flame blossomed, forming an image. Jon astride balefire, leading wings of living fire across the summer sea. Volantis burning. Slaves cheering. Then wings turning on Westeros. Kings landing a pyre. Winterfell lifting black banners under scarlet sky. He saw men kneel in ash, their faces blank with terror worship. Is this your future? No, Jon whispered. Never. The vision shattered. In its place appeared ghostly scenes of heartflame grown. Terraced farms on slopes, smithies hammering star-bright steel, dragons roosting on domes while children chased their shadows. Envoys from every nation came not in chains but in wonder. Choose, the figure said. Jon looked down. Longclaw was in his hand. Its pale wolf pommel gleamed silver. He could drive it into the egg, shatter the heart, douse the flame forever. Or he could let the sword fall and embrace the fire fully, risk its hunger bleeding beyond restraint. But there was a third path. He sheathed Longclaw, curled his scarred palms together, and drew a breath of heat deep enough to sear memory. Then he knelt, laying his joined hands upon the shell one final time. Not by sword, he said, nor by shadow. By balance. Bender. He spoke words in the old tongue of the north. A lullaby Lyanna had sung in a voice half-remembered. He spoke words in the free folk dialect. A joke Tormund once bellowed. He spoke words in High Valyrian, the promise Dany had murmured by the narrow sea. Soldares es busdari ixos deor. A dragon is not a slave. When the last syllable left his lips, the pulse of the egg synced with his heartbeat. It did not consume. It did not surrender. It matched. In the cavern the guardians knelt. Every obsidian knee touched stone in perfect unison. Moqorro wept scarlet tears. Sam fell to all fours, tablets forgotten, breath hitching. Asha gripped her axes yet felt no urge to raise them. The heat washed over her like fierce salt wind. Davos set his kite shield aside, one hand on his chest, as though steadying an unruly heart that had remembered how to hope. The figure of shifting forms regarded Jon once more. It bent a knee. Then it dissolved into motes of ember that spiraled into Longclaw's scabbard, into the wolf's white fur, into the pores of Jon's scarred hands. The shell of the heart cracked, not shattering, unfolding, releasing no wave of doom, but a single plume of flame that rose, narrowed, hardened into a straight rod of red gold crystal before Jon's eyes. As it cooled, it shaped itself. A slim sword, guardless and gripless. All one piece, light rolled inside its core like sunrise behind stained glass. Jon closed his fingers around it. The blade weighed nothing. Heat fused to his pulse, alive yet obedient. He looked up to find the guardians rising, blades lowered. Their ember eyes dimmed to coal. They stepped back into the glassy forest and stood like statues, and molten seams on their bodies sealed. They would move only on their king's command. Moqorro's voice broke the hush. The tempering is done. A king bound to fire, yet unburned. Sam wiped tears and soot. And the heart sleeps, not chained, but at peace. Jon turned to his companions. The crystal sword cast warm light across their faces. Then we make this peace last. The long climb to the surface ended beneath a violet dawn. Balefire greeted them with a throaty rumble and shadowed their march to the upper plaza. Word of their return spread faster than birds. Settlers spilled from archways and half-rebuilt halls, bases streaked with ash and hope. Jon raised the crystal blade. It caught the newborn sun, scattering rubies of light across the stones. Heart flame stands, he called. The city's guardians are ours. The fires below have sworn to guide, not to judge. Today we begin the shaping of a realm that will not prey upon the weak. He felt the words take shape like living steel. We are freeholders of a new age, every one of us. Cheers broke like a tide. Somewhere above, a dragon trumpeted. Yet building came with its own wars. The Triarchy of the Stepstones learned of Valyria's rebirth through pirate whispers and sent 10 galleys to test the rumor. They found truth in balefire. Dragons swooped. Hulls burned white. Volantis dispatched envoys riding elephants across the Worm River Delta. The envoys brought slaves to carry their litters. Jon had them fed, clothed, and offered places among his builders, then sent the envoys home on foot with a single warning carved into copper plates. No chains in Heartflame, the free cities argued. Braavos watched. Rav, once a sellsword captain of doubtful loyalty, began preaching in taverns of a king who knelt before no crown yet ruled a fire that loved him. Pilgrims came from Essos's darkest corners, some drawn by prophecy, some by gold rumors, some by curiosity. All were welcomed if they left their whips behind. Months blended as terraces of obsidian bricks rose in concentric circles around the central keep. Following lines Jon saw in half dreams, half drawn by Sam's restored maps. Words of heat flow so that every culvert captured warmth to drive mills, so every home glowed in winter without burning forests. Dragons nested in old airy towers lovingly repaired by stonemasons. Hatchlings learned to glide in the updrafts of volcanic vents, yet were gently shepherded away from inhabited quarters. Balefire chose the peak of a half-collapsed ziggurat as his perch. Jon climbed to him each dusk, the crystal blade, named Dawnfire by Sam's suggestion, sheened at his side, and together they watched the city lights bloom. Jon spoke quietly of mistakes made, and yet to come. The dragon listened, lids drooping, as though lessons passed through scale to heart. Winter scented the wind across the narrow sea, when the first envoy from Westeros arrived. A gray-feathered raven wearing a ribbon of stark white. It carried Bran's words short and weighty. You left a kingdom, but not your duty. Winter is safe. This flame may warm the world or scorch it. Choose well, brother. Jon stood on the rebuilt seawall, reading the message while foam crashed below. Choose well. Had he not done so each hour since the tempering? Yet Bran's words carried other meaning. North remembers, North watches. He penned reply with ink mixed from volcanic soot. The fire's tamed, not mastered. Send those who will share in its warmth and guard against its rage. Weeks later, 3 ships bearing direwolf banners rounded the headland. On the deck of the largest stood Arya Stark, hair silvered by sea wind, eyes bright as moonlit water. Beside her towered an armored figure in weirwood white plate, Brienne of Tarth. Behind them, banners of House Valerian and House Mormont snapped. When Arya stepped onto black sand, she grinned like the knife of dawn. You always choose the roads no map dares mark, she said, embracing Jon. Behind her Brienne knelt without ceremony. For Lady Catelyn, she said softly. Jon raised her up and glimpsed tears trembling on the edge of a smile. They brought gifts. Seeds hardy against stone soil, wildling artisans who had learned to shape ice tunnels beneath last hearth. And a pact sealed with Bran's name, Heartflame, to send dragon-fueled warmth north each winter by way of Valyrian-built heat casks. The north to send ironwood and freshwater fish in return. Not all arrivals came as friends. A secret cabal of Pentoshi magisters hired Braavosi assassins to strike at Jon during the night of Emberfall, when dragon hatchlings performed first flight. The assassins slipped through sewer vents of steam, but the city itself felt the intrusion. Copper pipes screamed, molten rivulets blocked tunnels, rooms shifted. The killers emerged into a courtyard surrounded by silent guardians, who shattered them in a storm of glass before the first bolt flew. When Jon reached the scene, shards still crackled underfoot. He looked up at statues lining the parapet and felt Dawnfire thrum at his hip. The city watched, content. They will keep testing, Davos warned later, rolling the shards in his palm. Fire draws moths. Then we show moths a gentle light, Jon answered. And keep the pyre ready. He formed a council of equals. Sam as Lorekeeper, Asha as Admiral of the Bay, Mokoro as Flame Warden, tasked to oversee priest and furnace alike, Arya as Shadowblade guiding covert defenses. Davos as Hand of the King, though he balked at titles until Jon told him the realm needed a hand that had steered storms. One mild dusk John walked with Arya along the promenade where obsidian balustrades overlooked lava streams tamed to run like mirrored rivers. Fireflies danced above the heat. Do you ever wish you had simply sailed beyond the sunset? She asked, kicking a pebble that hissed when it touched molten water. Some nights, John admitted. But then I recall how many sunsets we watched thinking there'd be no dawn. He gestured at terraced lights, dragons soaring between pillars, children chasing ember-cooled cinders across the square. This is a dawn worth staying for. Arya's grin flashed. Then stay. I'll chase the far seas for us both and bring you stories. She kept her word. Arya's ship hopped east beyond the Jade Gates, bringing back pepper seeds that took root in ash soil, bringing carved idols of unknown gods that Sam dutifully archived, bringing tales of yet sleeping dragons rumored in the shivering sea. John listened to every tale, mind ever half on forge heat pulsing beneath the throne. Years unwound their slow coil. Heartflame grew from settlement to beacon. A thieves' market became an academy where steel-faced Bravosi swordmasters sparred beside unsullied veterans training coalskin youths. A shattered amphitheater warbled again with music. Valyrian horns mingled with black goat drums. Northman ballads, Dornish lutes. Dragons nested farther afield in cliffs once barren. Their droppings, alchemized by volcanic nitrates, fattened the soil for orchards of blood-orange trees and silver figs. But peace is a blade that dulls without whetstone. On the 9th year after the tempering, a dread fleet under black sun banners entered the smoking sea. 30 war galleys captained by Aralor zealots, who rejected Makora's teachings. They claimed John defied the Lord of Light by refusing holy war. They demanded surrender or cleansing fire. John rode Balefire to speak with them. Over sullen waves he hovered, the dragon's wings fanning smoke, dawnfire glowing across his lap. He offered trade and dialogue. The zealots loosed red-tipped scorpion bolts. One clipped Balefire's shoulder. Black blood sizzled on the sea. Joan's calm shattered. He let Dawnfire arc once in the air. Its trail blazed a semicircle of red light, and every vent along the coast answered geysering steam. Dragons rose in thunderous unison. A storm of flame turned the fleet into floating iron skeletons within minutes. The survivors leaped to flaming sea and vanished. That night, John knelt beside Balefire, tending the wing wound. The dragon licked his singed hair with a tongue hot as forge, crooned low. I never wish to answer with fire, John whispered. But some lessons are written only in ash. When the 20th anniversary of Heartflame arrived, the city's population surpassed 10,000. Freedmen, wildlings, exiles, scholars, children who had never known any land but stone warmed by gentle fire. On the eve of celebration, Sam unlocked the 7th ward of the library crypt and discovered a final chamber. A map room. Tilted spheres of jade and lapis mirrored Westeros and Essos, but between them lay a third mass, valleys, forests, mountains, no cartographer alive recalled. An ancient legend carved beneath read simply, Essos Tolas, SOS, unshackled. Sam brought the find to John. They had plans even grander. Use dragons and heatcraft to birth new land from sea and fire, growing an empire the size of all continents combined. John traced the coastline with a fingertip, a dream that burned the world once. He looked up at his oldest friend. Do you fear we might repeat their hubris, Sam? Sam smiled sadly. I feared it every day. Yet each day you proved humble enough to ask. John exhaled. Then we build, but not for empire. For refuge, rooms for anyone the old world casts aside. He commissioned a fleet of crystal-prowed lantern ships to ferry refugees from war-torn Karth, from slave pits the Triarchy rebuilt in secret, from famine-struck islands of the Jade. Each ship bore a dragon figurehead that glowed soft red at night, a promise seen leagues away by desperate eyes. Ghosts grew old, muzzle gray, yet still stalked the ramparts, the silent prince of shadows. When at last he curled beneath John's throne and did not rise, dragons circled the citadel in voiceless tribute. their keening hush folding the city in shared sorrow. Jon buried Ghost on a hill of cooled slag overlooking the sea, planting a single weirwood sapling fed by Ghost's ashes and the tears of a king. In time the tree's bark grew streaked with gray instead of white, its leaves a mottled red-black like Balefire's scales. Sam called it the Shadow Weir. As decades passed, Jon's hair silvered, but the heat inside never dimmed. Dawnfire remained warm in its scabbard. Guardians still patrolled silent avenues. Dragons still bowed necks when he passed. He married a healer from Volantis, a woman named Neria with laughter like raindrops on bronze bells. And they raised children who raced along parapets with hatchlings and read in the library's cantilevered nooks. King's Landing sent envoys in later years. Sansa, queen in the south, riding in a litter of winter roses, grandchildren in tow. She walked Heartflame's streets in awe, shook hands with freed brickmakers from Astapor, wept softly at Ghost's grave. That night she stood beside Jon atop the ziggurat, while Balefire slept curled around its base, heat rippling in gentle breaths. "The world changed when Bran gave you exile," Sansa said. He saw this in the flames of time. Jon gazed over the city aglow like a net of stars on earth. He saw possibilities. "We merely followed the brightest threads." Menderswash. She touched his scarred palm. "Keep weaving, brother." Years turned slower, as they do. Then, all at once, Mokoro died mid-sermon, his heart surrendering to the blaze he carried for so long. They placed his body on a basalt bier at the edge of the caldera, and Balefire lit a single breath. Red priests of rival doctrines knelt beside common bricklayers, heads bowed equal. When Sam's joints stiffened too much for scrollwork, he trained a cadre of librarians, young women and men of no single heritage, to tend lore. He spent final days on a balcony over molten streams, dictating histories of Heartflame. Jon visited each dawn. They spoke of ravens, of children's stubbornness, of the first winter snowflake that melted on balcony stone. Sam slipped away one morning while Jon's hand lay over his, quill stilled between fingers. Jon stood on the throne dais that evening, Dawnfire planted tip down before him. He felt the heart below, steady, slower than in youth yet firm. Grief coiled tight, but grief was flame's twin. Both could forge. He looked at faces around. Asha gray-templed yet fierce. Davos seated with cane across knees. Arya leaning in a threshold only half present. Brienne shining white as sunrise. New faces too. Mariners of the Jade. Children of slaves and slavers alike, grown into smiths, scholars, dragon riders. He spoke of Sam, of stories enduring beyond the teller, of duty that wears many cloaks. He charged them to guard humility as jealously as dragons guard hatchlings. Then he raised Dawnfire and passed it to his eldest daughter, Lyanna Snow Neria. The sword cooled in her grip, accepting. The heart below answered with a fresh, gentle throb. Balefire watched from the balcony. The dragon was old now, wings scarred, eyes filmed with smoke of long memories, yet power hummed inside him undimmed. Jon climbed onto black-on-green scales, felt bones creak but spirit lift. Together they soared into night. Below, Heartflame's terraces bloomed in topaz arcs, molten channels tracing veins of living light, while dragons young and ancient drew constellations of ember across a sky scrubbed clean by sea wind. Jon guided Balefire eastward, toward a horizon where dawn forever waited. He did not seek conquest, nor refuge, nor even certainty. He sought only the open wind, the same wind that had once carried the Night's Watch ravens, that had once carried the swan wing across forbidden seas, that now carried whispers of a reborn Valyria to corners of a world, still learning how to hope. Behind him the city thrummed, a quiet harmonious chord, molten heart, living stone, beating souls. Ahead, the dark rolled on, immense and uncharted. It begins here, he thought once more, and the words tasted not of ash this time, but of dawn's first warmth on winter skin. The sea of night closed behind Jon and Balefire, leaving Heartflame a dwindling constellation on the western horizon. High currents carried them over glass-dark waters, where no lanterns fished and no thunder dared wander. The dragon's wounded wing ached with every downstroke, yet he flew stubborn, each beat a testament to scars endured together. Jon lay against the ridge of Balefire's neck with Dawnfire strapped along his spine, letting the sword's slow warmth bleed into bones stiff from age and memory. Stars wheeled overhead, foreign and bright. Constellations he had named as a boy, Icefang, the Old Bear, sank beneath new ones etched in frosted sapphire. On the third night, a crescent moon rose bruised violet, its halo ghosted by an aurora pouring like silk down the sky's seam. Jon guided Balefire lower. Skimming cloud tops tinged copper by the dragon's inner furnace. Far below, pale ice drifted in rafts, glowing faintly as though lit from within. When one floe cracked, a streak of lurid green pulsed in the fracture. Liquid fire trapped under frozen skin. Jon caught his breath. They had reached the shivering sea's outer marches, where whispered legends spoke of ghostglass and sleeping leviathans. At dawn they landed on a lonely floe the size of Winterfell's godswood. Balefire folded wings, coughing rivulets of steam from nostrils. Jon slid to ice that hissed beneath dragon heat, then knelt, pressing a gauntlet to the translucent crust. Beneath, water glimmered like green fire, swirling around pale shadows as long as ironclad galleys. The sea murmured, old and patient. Jon laid his palm flat in greeting, recalling the heartfire he had tamed, wondering if these depths also harbored flares of the world's first flame. Balefire's head swung west, ridged nostrils flaring. A distant roar rolled like thunder across the floes. Jon straightened. Another dragon's cry, higher metallic, echoed from beyond a curtain of drifting snow. He mounted without command. Balefire leapt, wings shattering fragile ice edges. They followed the cry through veils of sleet until the frozen plain broke upon a black glass ridge. Beyond, amid shattered volcanoes glazed by centuries of frost, sprawled an eyrie of jagged basalt spires. Pale smoke wisped from vents half buried in snowdrifts. On a pinnacle crouched a dragon, unlike any Jon had seen. Its scales pearlescent, rippling pink to indigo depending on the angle of thin sunlight, as though mother of pearl had hardened into armor. The beast's eyes shone white without pupil. It shrieked again, wings mantling over a nest of ice-webbed eggs. Balefire's answering bellow carried both challenge and kinship. He circled deliberately. Jon felt the older dragon's muscles ripple with excitement and caution. The pearl dragon sniffed the air, then tilted its head, staring at Jon as though peering through him to the fire beneath. Slowly it folded wings and sank to its belly. A welcome. Jon guided Balefire to perch on a lower shelf. Cold bit his cheeks, yet the dragon's body radiated sufficient heat to thaw shallow channels in the ice. He dismounted, Dawnfire sheathed. The pearl dragon watched in silence while Jon approached on foot. Between them, a chasm yawned. Steam drifted from its depths where magma still pulsed. An ancient bridge of fused glass spanned the gap, delicate as spider silk, but hardened by unimaginable pressure. Jon placed one step upon it. The bridge glowed underfoot, responding to contact like ripples in starlight. Each subsequent step brightened the span, until a ribbon of light connected the two dragons. At the midpoint, Jon halted. He raised both hands, palms out, repeating the word his heart knew in every tongue. Peace. A shape emerged from behind the pearl dragon's foreleg. Human? Slight, clad in patchwork furs, bleached nearly white. The figure's hood fell back, revealing a girl no older than 16. Hair silver gold, eyes pale, but not blind. She stared at Jon, expression unreadable. In her arms she cradled a dragonette scarcely larger than a hawk, its scales smoky lilac. The dragonette chirruped. Balefire growled softly in response. The girl extended her free hand. Her voice, when it came, was brittle but clear. "Ash King," she said in thick Valyrian. "Heart Flame's rider." Jon inclined his head. "Snow Forged," he answered, using the title the Guardians had once called him. "I come in search of those who share the gift and burden of fire." She nodded toward Balefire's scarred wing. "The burden is written in flesh." She motioned him forward. Together they crossed the remaining bridge. Her name was Soria, last daughter of House Pyre Ulthor. A line thought extinguished when Bravos shattered the final Valyrian war hosts 2 centuries before. Her ancestors had fled into the shivering sea, following rumor of primal hatcheries where dragon eggs could sleep out ice ages, waiting for blood to call them. Pyre Ulthor had dwindled to a single family tending dying drakes in frozen caverns. Raiders from IB had slain her kin a year past. Soria alone survived, guarded by the Pearl matriarch she called Sylvicon. Jon listened beside a vent's gentle hiss while Soria told her tale. Sylvicon leaned close, inhaling Jon's scent, brushing his shoulder with a scale hard as glacier glass. Dawnfire pulsed steady, wordless. "You are not Valyrian." Soria observed, tracing the wolf emblem on Jon's cloak. "Yet the fire obeys." "I was tempered by Heartflame," Jon said. "It burned away old chains but left the north in my blood." He glanced to the cradled dragonet. "Will you come south? Heartflame welcomes all who reject chains. Your hatchlings would have skies warm and wide." Soria's gaze drifted to the horizon where dawn brewed pale. "The ice will claim us otherwise," she admitted. She bit her lip, summoning courage. "But I abandoned no oath willingly. First I must end the hungry silence." "Ms." She led Jon to the basin behind Sylvicon's nest. There, scattered across snow, lay ribbed fragments of eggs blackened as if boiled dry. "The hungry silence rises from fissures each solstice," she whispered. "A thing without voice." Shaped of broken shadow, devours younglings before shell cracks. It is bane born of frozen fire. The peace between ice and flame turned poison. Jon traced one scorched fragment. He remembered obsidian guardians forming swords from molten breath. Here the opposite, cold, devouring flame. Perhaps wherever the first flame slept, equal darkness lurked where heat died. "I will face it with you," he said. They descended a stair carved by ancient claws into the caldera. Veins of dim violet light threaded walls, like arteries of imprisoned dusk. Soria whispered the path, her syllables smiting echoes that tried to weave doubt. At the base a cavern opened, roof lost in gloom. Stalactites dripped hoarfrost. In the center, a round pool lay mirror still, surface solid under the chill. It was not water but true glass. Liquid reflection solidified without temperature. A stillness so deep Jon's breath came back silent. The hungry silence rose without warning. A ripple across solid glass, then a bulge shaped vaguely like a wolf with too many joints, body blacker than absence, edges shifting through phases of nothingness. When it opened a mouth, no sound emerged, only a draft that pulled warmth from skin. Jon drew Dawnfire. The blade flared, white gold, pushing heat outward. The creature recoiled. Patches along its limbs snapped crystalline, crackling with fissures that bled cold. Yet where swordlight faded, the fractures sealed. "It feeds on the spaces between heartbeats," Soria cried. "Give it none." Jon closed his eyes. Instead of lifting blade, he stilled it, letting flame gutter until only embers swam beneath the crystal. His breathing slowed, each inhale deeper, calm. The cavern pressed, eager to leach warmth. He thought of the heart beneath Valyria, its balanced thrum, neither devouring nor conceding. In that memory lay answer. He stepped forward, blade down. The hungry silence advanced, tendrils stretching to wrap him. Jon exhaled slowly, offering not fire, not fear, but equilibrium, the quiet between fall of snow and settling ash. The tendrils grazed his skin, an ache of winter stabbed, but did not spread. Jon lowered Dawnfire's tip to the true glass surface, letting a single spark drip. It sank like dawn dropping into still lake. Circles of light rippled. Slow as creation, the hungry silence trembled. Each ripple mirrored outward, carving rings of translucence through the shadow creature. as though mapping veins of hope within emptiness. With each ring, its form lost cohesion, until only motes drifted like soot on undone breeze. They settled on true glass, melted, and were gone. Soria sagged, tears freezing on lashes. A breath returned to the cavern. Delicate, living. Jon sheathed his sword. True glass at his feet softened into water, then steam, then rose luminous. He watched mist gather around fragments of scorched eggs, condensing. The eggs mended, shell knitting anew. Within, faint heartbeats stirred. You tempered the silence. Soria whispered. He shook his head, balanced it, as all fires must be. Bendanwani. They emerged under a night newly burning with auroras. Sylvicon greeted them with a warble that vibrated snow from overhangs. Balefire answered, despite exhaustion, trumpeting skyward. 7 dragons hatched in the weeks that followed. 3 pearl, 2 shadow slate, and 2 the palest blue. Soria named them for lost kin. When the weakest struggled with first flight, Balefire loped along the ridge, wings half spread, showing the youngster how wind could cradle even a trembling dream. Spring's blush found Jon's bones renewed. He helped Soria carve harnesses from bone and whale sinew, taught her the stabilizing leg grip he had learned atop Rhaegal long ago. In turn, she shared songs Pyre Ulthor mothers sang, lilting Valyrian cadences that soothed hatchlings. The dragons learned each other's cadence, Balefire's deep rolling thunder, Sylvicon's silver chime, the hatchling's soft flute. But memory tugged south. Jon woke before dawn beneath a canvas of stars, and knew Heartflame's heartbeat quickened in search of him. He spoke with Soria beside the nesting grounds. The world will come, he warned. Pilgrims, kings, slavers cloaked as merchants. Your skies must be guarded. We will guard them together. She said, eyes clear. Take me to the furnace realm. They departed at first thaw. Balefire, Sylvicon, 4 weaned hatchlings circling like bright sparks. Sea ice cracked to reveal an ocean of green fire now tamed by dragon heat overhead. They crossed the narrow sea where trading cogs bowed sails at their passing. And when Westeros' gray coast came into view, Jon glimpsed banners new and strange. A white rose quartered with a sigil of a flame-rimmed eye. News for another day. Heartflame greeted them in riotous color. Terraces once black now glowed with orchards heavy with crimson fruit. Canals spiraled warmth through hothouse gardens where lemons the size of fists burst with sweet, frost-tinged juice. Dragons old and new lined rooftops, trilling welcome. At the ziggurat's summit Lyanna waited, Dawnfire's twin, forged by the city's artisans from molten shard, strapped across her back. When she saw her father, she laughed like steel meeting water. They embraced amid a swirl of hatchling wings. Behind Lyanna stood Asha, hair white as sea foam, and Davos, cane replaced by copper brace, face still alight with storm's heat outrun. Arya stepped from shadow, smile quick and quiet. The realm Jon had left pulsed, vibrant. Night brought feast and counsel. Soria told her tale. Lyanna asked careful questions, scribes recording new dialects. The heart fire beneath them hummed approval, resonating with Sylvicon's breath. Jon listened, content, until the hall's torches guttered blue. Mokoro's successor, young priestess Kessia, entered. Expression grave. She bowed. Flame warns, she said. A star falls. They climbed the tower where astronomers charted dragon flight. The sky burned scarlet along the western horizon, not with sunset but with a falling brand, streak so massive it dwarfed any comet Jon had seen. As they watched, 5 smaller sparks peeled off, plunging toward known continents. Kessia's voice quivered. Stone wrought of breath, woken by greed, falls to test the Ash King anew. Jon's pulse matched the heart beneath. He turned to daughter and counsel. Where did they land? Scouts ventured. Within a fortnight ravens returned. One ember star shattered over Volantis, birthing a storm that turned men mad with visions. Another sank in summer sea, boiling waves. A third impaled Ib's gray mountains, cracking them. A fourth slammed into Slaver's Bay, unleashing pestilence that turned blood to molten tar. And the fifth burrowed into ruined old Valyria's southern ridge outside Heartflame's domain, carving a crater that spat black ash, laced with shards of living obsidian that crawled on spider legs. Soria named them Ember Shards. Ice beyond ice. They devour but do not burn. Hunger older than flame. Now, Jon assembled wings. Balefire and Sylvacon led 30 dragons, among them riders from north, from stepstones, from freed Yunkish pitfighters. Lyanna took command of guardians to shield Heartflame, while Jon flew south. He kissed Nereus' brow, promised return before second moonrise. Flight south tasted of iron. Over lagoon ruins of Valyria they saw the plague. Villagers weeping tar, fields melting. Red priests burned whole hamlets to halt spread. At each pyre Jon felt Shardheart pulse, pushing him onward. When Black Plume near the southern ridge appeared, dragons screamed unrest. The air itself shimmered wrong. Heat blurred while frost rimed wingtips. Balefire wheezed, scales cracking. Sylvacon keened. They landed on a broken bridge spanning the crater. Obsidian shards wormed from ash. Spidery limbs clicking, joining to form larger constructs. Dark mirrors of the glass guardians, but twisted. Edges dripping void. Jon drew Dawnfire. Its glow faltered, conflicted between kinship and repulsion. Flame and frost swirled around each other. From the pit's heart rose a shard the size of a holdfast, facets reflecting impossible depths. Within, viperous strands of pale light writhed. A mouth formed, jagged gap splitting crystal. It spoke in a hiss of cracking glaciers. Fire nauseates. Silence sundered. Balance undone. Jon realized, the hungry silence's progenitor, hurled by celestial convulsion, seeking to drown flame across world. Where Heartfire balanced creation, shards sought null. He stepped forward. Balefire rumbled objection. Jon laid palm to muzzle. Guard the young. He slid down rubble. Shards skittering. Light from Dawnfire sputtered yet held. Jon recalled Truglass Pool, the hush between breaths. He sheathed blade, approached open-handed. I offer balance, he declared. The shard convulsed, laughter a breaking stone. Flame forgets pact. Consume or be quashed. There is no middle. Jon closed eyes. Images, the doom, Mad Queen's fire. Hungry silence devouring eggs. Extremes birthed ruin. Yet he saw too. Winter wind forging resilience, flames forging hope, hearts forging children. He opened eyes, voice calm. There is always the hearth, he said, where ice and fire meet in quiet glow. He cut his palm, pressed blood against Shard's gleaming surface. Instantly, cold surged, numbing. Pain stabbed deep, then receded. Blood froze into crimson crystal branching, burrowing veins through shard like vines. At each wind, frost met ember memory. Melted, refroze, melted. Cycle forging new pattern. Dragons roared as light erupted. Not flame, not darkness. Intermittent pulses weaving. Shard shrieked, edges spalling. It tried to rip free, but veins anchored deeper, rewriting lattice. Jon's blood sang with Heartfire, with silence, bridging. With final pulse, the shard fractured into motes that hovered weightless. They drifted upward, scattering across sky as gentle snow of glass petals melting before ground. The spider shards crumbled, husks falling inert. Crater cooled. Frost faded. Jon collapsed. Balefire lifted him in claws, wings beating unsteadily till safe ground. Sylvacon's soothing trill stitched air. When consciousness edged back, Jon felt Dawnfire cool on chest. Blade doubled. Half ember, half frost, joined at heart. He tested breath. Pulse steady, dual. Council later gathered around obsidian hearth in Heartflame. Jon spoke soft. Shard tried to force choice. I chose hearth again. He brandished new blade. Ice Flame Dawn, Sam would name it. Henceforth balance shall guide rule. Years rolled yet again. Heartflame scholars learned to fold shard snow into glass that neither shattered nor burned. Windows for sky keeps, lenses for far-looking. Soria's hatchlings matured, pearl wings bright over Caldera lakes. Lyanna wed a Brovosi navigator. Their child carried unmatched skill to ride both dragon and sea wind. Bridging worlds, Jon aged slower than seasons. Some whispered heartfire stilled winter in his veins. Others said shard balance tethered him between beats. He cared little for why, tending orchards by day, walking library vaults by star-shifting torch. Children sought him for stories, dragons for quiet company. On the 50th Jubilee of Heartflame, bells forged from shard glass chimed harmony audible across leagues. Nations once slave-bound sent emissaries bearing charters renouncing bondage. A lone Iron Throne envoy arrived, carrying Bran's final words carved into weirwood. Brother realm stands in spring because your hearth warmed winter's sigh. My watch ends, yours glows. Jon pressed forehead to wood, tears silvering beard. Soon after, balefire failed to rise for dawn patrol. The dragon lay on terrace warmed for him, eyes filmed but tranquil. Jon sat beside old companion all day, recounting each flight, each storm, each forgiving hush inside furnace wind. At twilight, balefire exhaled a final lantern-bright breath that rose as sparks and drifted to join stars. His body cooled, petrifying to obsidian statue glimmering crimson. Heartflame mourned with silence deeper than song. Sylvicon unfurled wings across sky, shedding pearlescent scales that rained luminous. Jon's heart ached yet held steady. Where pain dwelt, balance followed. He ordered Balefire's statue remain as watchstone at city's crest, scales engraved with names of every soul, friend or foe, who had shaped the road. It soon gleamed with thousands of runes. Seasons turned luminous. Arctic caravans arrived, bearing mirrored ice that never melted. Desert tribes traded wind whales' air bladders. Carthene dreamers donated colored sand that, when melted with shard glass, birthed stained panels retelling saga of ice and fire. Heartflame's towers stretched filament bridges between them, humming resonant chords when dragons passed. Jon spent evenings upon bridge where he had met Balefire's gaze after the tempering, watching new riders train hatchling flocks. Lyanna often joined, discussing governance, disputes among guilds, proposals for starfaring sails. She asked once, "Father, what remains for you?" He smiled, lines deep, but eyes bright, watching seeds grown bear fruit. Sweeter than imagination. He squeezed her hand. Yet horizons whisper. He began walking east after council adjourned each night, following inner tug older than names. At last on Midsummer's Eve he called assembly in Great Hall. Guardians lined aisles, dragons perched on balconies. Flame sconces glowing gentle purple. A new hue discovered by alchemists, mixing shard dust with lavender oil. Jon stood before throne he had not sat in years. Lyanna bore that mantle. He carried neither crown nor blade, only a traveling cloak stitched from Balefire's mold. Voice steady, he addressed them. The hearth glows. Its care belongs to many hearts now, wiser young, stalwart elder. My journey continues outward. As each flame's spark leaps to light unlit logs, I will walk roads beyond maps, sowing balance where extremes threaten. You possess all needful, courage, curiosity, compassion. Remember the heart's lesson. Between ice and fire lies home. He bowed to council, to daughter, to priestess, to sister lurking grin shadow. Dawn yet dark, when Jon slipped through eastern gate, ice flame dawn hidden beneath cloak. Sylvicon glided overhead. Soria waited astride, offering taloned hand. Together they soared, trailed by two pearl blue-winged grandchildren of Balefire, Skyglass and Emberline. Singing, they crossed Dothraki Sea, where herds ran unafraid beneath dragon shadow. They crossed Red Waste, now blossoming with oses carved by shard ice canals. They crossed Bones Mountains, where IB giants labored beside Valemen to build vaults storing seeds for harsher ages. Everywhere they saw fractures healed, yet flickers of imbalance lingered. Greed nibbling edges, fear sowing fences, old hatred sparking kindling. They did not conquer. They listened. Some nights John sat by low campfire among nomads who'd never heard king or doom, sharing dry date bread while sky-ribboned meteor trails. He spoke of warmth that does not burn, of cold that does not kill, of hearth that awaits all. Those who listened carried story onward. As years blurred, tales reached heartflame of gray-haired wanderer, bearing sword of fused dawn, arriving in cities on brink. Castapor threatened by plague of glass moths, Norvos by cult of burning ink, Leng by wave of dreamless sleep, each time leaving equilibrium in his wake, then vanishing before dawn. Lyanna in old age walked terrace one evening and swore she saw silhouette of rider against full moon, bowing farewell. She felt city's hard answer with pulse unique, grief, pride, infinite warmth. Centuries passed. Heartflame endured storms of empire, quake of continents, slow dance of stars. Scholars debated whether the Ash King became myth or still roamed unseen, guiding world through epochs. Dragons dwindled, then multiplied anew. Guardians eroded, then were recast. Yet in central courtyard Balefire's obsidian form never cracked, runes multiplying like fingerprints of generations thanking fire's gentle might. In time when memory of Iron Throne shrank to footnote, pilgrims still arrived, seeking bridge where silence turned to song. They traced bootprint in stone, said to be Jon Snow's last upon city he forged. Legend held that when balance again tipped and hearts forgot hearth, the print would glow, summoning King of Ash and Dawn to guide home. And so, on a night when twin moons eclipsed each other, casting world in ring of amethyst, a child tending library lanterns noticed faint glimmer in stone step. She touched it. Warmth spread like sunrise. Above, pearl and obsidian dragons roused, lifting heads to starlit sky. Somewhere beyond mapped frontiers, an old wolf eyes mirrored eternity, turned toward distant beacon, and smiled. Ka. The snowfall was thin and brittle where it drifted across the high road that wound along the pillars of rise. Jon's cloak fluttered behind him in a hush of torn black and shimmering pearl, the last two scales from Balefire stitched into the throat clasp. Sylvicon glided above, wings slicing the haze. The twin young dragons, Skyglass and Emberline, spiraled restless loops at her flanks, still learning the discipline of endurance flight. They had been traveling east for the better part of 13 seasons, long enough that legend ran before them, long enough that 1,000 small hearths bore tales of the Ash King, who gathered balance from the world's frayed seams. Jon no longer counted time by moons or by the creak of his joints, for those subtle aches arrived only when he forgot to breathe with the furnaces churning beneath his ribs. Instead, he marked his progress in the quality of silences. The hush of a market at dusk once tyrants had been persuaded to share grain. The gentle stillness of a plague ward after the shard glass moths were coaxed into true glass lanterns that pulsed soothing glows. The deep, exultant quiet of a desert grove whose roots had been guided to remnant aquifers so that palms could rise where one. Soria remained at his side, her laughter grown huskier, her stride still nimble as the day she'd balanced on the bridge of starlit glass. She had taken to wielding a spear forged from frost steel and tempered in Balefire's dying flame, its blade a translucent wedge that thrummed with each heartbeat. When she marched beside Jon across steppe or ferry deck, she seemed equal parts companion and guardian, though neither of them would name the role out loud. Companionship had long ago eclipsed old tokens such as rank. They descended from the pillars into the Vale of Duskenreach, where the river Ulai split into a fan of slow, copper-hued tributaries. This valley had been carved out of the old Krazi desert by tremors 300 years past, and its basin bore ruins as ancient as the first caravans, but also the scars of new strife. As they approached the first village, dome roofs of beaten clay, wind vanes made from scrap spaceship hulls, the scent of scorched pitch crawled into Jon's nostrils. A charred palisade still smoked in places. Tufts of brittle ash drifted on the dawn breeze. Soria scanned the sky. No banners. Whoever struck burned everything that could have carried a sigil. Damim? Raiders, John murmured, though the scorch pattern looked too precise. Beyond the gap in the palisade lay a cluster of shattered jars. Salt cod, barley meal, crimson peppers split open in heaps. The raiders wanted food then. Yet on the far side by a collapsed granary, there were neat stacks of medical herbs left untouched. That spoke not of hunger, but of a ritual of scarcity. Burn grain so the living remained dependent. He knelt beside an old woman who sat amid the wreckage, turning a cracked pot shard in her palms, as though its glazed pattern contained the answer to grief. John asked gently, "Who took your stores?" She raised eyes red with smoke, murmured the word, "Bonehand." Others in the village echoed it in fearful whispers, describing tall riders in skiffs that skimmed over mudflats on lifted aether fans. Their hands painted white to the elbow, their faces hidden behind masks carved from bleached ox bone. They came each harvest to take tithe, leaving just enough seed for next year's growth. A calculus of dependency enforced by fire. John traced a fingertip along dawn ice. The fused blade was wrapped now in linen to soften its flare of frost and ember, then stood. "Show us their route." A boy of 12 summers led them to the overlook where the Ulai bent east into Reed Marsh. There they saw the prints of skiff keels, scars in the mud. Trailing away to the horizons, bruised lavender. The tracks were edged by crystalline shards that glittered faintly. Shard glass. The raiders had learned to grind fragments from the fallen star that had once sought to drown Heartfire. When rubbed into mud, those fragments murmured with hush so no one could hear approach. John pocketed a piece, cold beyond ice, and weighed possibilities. He had fused a shard's progenitor into equilibrium, but slivers still lingered, raw and hungry, ready for human hands to shape into new weapons of silence. "Balance keeps tipping," Soria muttered. "And we keep tilting it back," John said. They requisitioned 3 reed skiffs left half-burned on the mudflats. Soria's frost steel spear served as mast pole once she lashed sailcloth between spur ribs. John coaxed the village farrier to lend them a sack of copper nails and tar. By dusk they had patch-fitted planking. Sylvicon and the young dragons flew overhead, their reflections rippling on the marsh water like living constellations. For 3 days they tracked the bonehands along winding tributaries that smelled of brine and rust. Each dusk they found another settlement smoldering. Not wholly razed, but strategically starved. At Deadlight Ford, they discovered a column of prisoners chained by limp shard glass links. The links leached body heat, so the captives shuffled in stupor. John placed dawn ice against the crystal. A pulse of warm-cold harmony cracked the links with harmonic shiver, freeing the prisoners in a howl of fracturing ice. One man, gaunt, thanked him in halting Kiskari. "They ride for the observatory," he warned, "where the sky sages keep eyes of sapphire." John's pulse quickened. He knew of the observatory, an ivory tower perched on the border of Old Korth, rumored to house lenses carved from star sapphire that could peer through cloud and perhaps through time. If Bonahan seized such lenses, and if they possessed shard glass, they could balance the world toward nullity, tilting shadows across every hearth. They pressed on. Marsh became salt flat. Salt flat gave way to cracked gray stone etched by ancient lava flows. The dragons flew high scouting. On 5th morning, signal of intimidation, she judged. They found the Bonehand encampment entrenched in the lee of basalt ridges. 7 ether skiffs tethered to pylons of ironwood, engines whining softly as they siphoned heat from buried magma pockets. Raiders moved with drilled precision, white-painted hands adjusting gas casks, fitting shard glass grapples to harpoon rifles. At camp center stood paint-streaked idol, a split mask of bone fused with black ice shards welded by chain. In the idol's chest cavity glowed a pale core reminiscent of hungry silence but unstable, fluttering like a captive moth. John counted 50 warriors. Too many for direct charge, but he had dragons. Yet dragon's flame might provoke the shard core, unleashing null frost. He thought of Heartfire's lesson: meet extremes with Hearth's hush. Night fell violet. He and Soria approached unseen, silhouettes merged with basalt formation. Skyglass and Emberline drifted overhead, wings silent, channeling stealth they'd learned from Sylvacon. When a patrol passed, John slipped behind them, breathing in rhythm with the land. He felt the shard core's pulse. Offbeat, frenzied, he whispered a song of lice he'd heard at a wharf, melody light enough to float on no wind. Dawn ice throbbed in response. Frost half, ember half. Soria placed her spear butt on ground. Frost halo spread beneath, cooling stone so footsteps would mask in thermal ooze. They reached the idol. Its glow cast sicklish light on Joan's weathered face. He noticed fissures lacing the shard egg. Within, a swarm of microshards churned, eager for release. The idol was a bomb that would devour heat and leave only brittle silence. Bonahan's meant to detonate it inside observatory, seizing lenses amid confusion. Soria lowered her spear, preparing to stab, but John stayed her. Not shatter, temper. He removed dawn ice from sheath. Blade hummed low, thirsty. He pressed edge against fissured surface. Balance surged, flame and frost weaving. The shard egg writhed, resisting equilibrium. A high whine rose, blowing cold wind across camp. Raiders spun, shouting through masks. John widened stance, letting heart's rhythm slow. Shard inside idol began synchronizing with his pulse. Frenetic thrum slackened, beating evenly. White paint on Raiders' hands dulled gray. They paused as if strings cut. Then an arrow hissed from shadows, embedding in dawn ice's crosscape. It carried smear of null dust. The blade faltered. Idol cracked louder. Shard sputtering. The Raider commander, a giant with mask of bull skull, charged, hurling a cup of powdered shard glass. Dull powder became razor flock mid-air. Swirling to slice. Soria vaulted. Spear whirling, creating vortex of chilled air that slowed shard flock. Skyglass plunged, exhaling a plume of vaporous frost ash taught by Sylvacon. Frost that softened glass to powder. Shard swarm clattered harmless. But the idol's core threatened runaway fracture. John sheathed dawn ice in single fluid motion, cupping his bare hands around the crack. Shard's edges cut flesh. Blood froze, then steamed. He poured memory into crystal. Laughter of Heartflame's academies. Hush when Ghost had first dozed at his feet, rustling orchard leaves. A child's wonder at golden figs. Warmth and cold braided through pain until core went translucent, swirling gently like snow globe. When he withdrew, the idol's glow stabilized. It ceased pulsing, emitting steady warm cool luminescence not unlike hearthfire. Bonahan staggered in confusion. White paint on arms peeled away as though ashamed. Raider commander dropped mask, revealing sun-scarred woman with eyes bruised by years of hunger. She fell to knees. Others followed. John spoke not of conquest, but of survival without predation. He offered them orchard seeds resistant to salt-flat soil, taught by Heartflame's botanists, and paths to join trade caravans, ferrying shardglass to Heartflame's safe vaults. Some refused, most accepted, weary of cycle. At dawn, they released prisoners captured earlier, returning pack animals, laden with observatory tribute. The idol was dismantled. Its tempered core John stored in a lead-lined coffer. Later perhaps priests of Kessia's order would weave it into new lanterns balancing towns at desert fringe. They resumed journey. The observatory loomed ahead, ivory spire glittering with dew of higher altitude. Its archways hosted scholars in sapphire cloaks, who bowed to John and to dragons with curiously unfazed air, as though prophetic lenses had long shown them this arrival. Inside highest dome, the sky sages unveiled the saphiric lumen. A crystal lens 3 strides in diameter, cut so fine it resolved shifting patterns of cosmic currents. a days of possibility where futures branched. A hush cloaked the chamber. John stood before the lens. Starlight refracted, painting his face in fractured dawn. Through that portal he glimpsed threads. One where Heartflame collapsed into Tyrant Fortress. One where Shard Null devoured every dragon's egg. One where House Stark's sigil flew again over a reforged realm of winters unlived, because climate had twisted. He saw two intimate threads. Soria's laughter frozen mid-breath by a single poisoned dart on some unseen road. Lyanna's grandson weeping at sea's edge as trade war burned pearl sails. John's knees weakened under weight of maybe. He closed eyes. Heartfire pulsed steady. When he opened them, he asked the sages not to hide nor to wield the luminous oracle, rather to teach all who wished to see that futures were possibility, not prophecy. The sages hesitated. This knowledge had been hoarded for centuries. But John sat upon paved floor and recounted how he had been forged not by certainty, but by choices made under crushing doubt. When he finished, the eldest sage removed her sapphire sash and placed it around his shoulders. "Open our doors," she declared to assembly. "Let any soul who brings curiosity peer into the lumen." Thus Observatory became a school, not a sanctuary of fear. Raiders settled as guards of trade routes, earning coin instead of tribute. Balance tilting again. Marked down. And years spilled like sand through a thousand-handed hourglass. At the silent cliffs of Ankara, John and Soria weathered a storm of voice-eating dust and taught cliff monks to weave soundless wind into musical chimes. In the jungle archipelago of Kelthun, they brokered peace between stoneshell tortoisefolk and pearl divers by trading shard glass prisms that refracted sunlight deep enough for coral groves to thrive where nets would no longer tangle. Each time extremes threatened, volcano vomiting blackstone hail, necromancer cult coaxing frozen souls from glaciers, empire forging steel, laced with star null. John answered, not with domination, but with mediation, guided by memory of the hearth. Flame soft enough to warm, frost soft enough to preserve, both in dialogue instead of... He aged, though slower than companions. Hair, once streaked salt and coal, turned almost entirely silver, yet skin retained vigor. Soria teased that Heartfire had cheated time. John countered that her pearl dragon bloodline gifted decades of bloom. Truth lay perhaps in Journey's demand. The world still needed watchers. But watchers, too, require rest. One twilight on the plateau of glass ferns, after averting flood by carving channels with dawn ice, John felt aftershock of exhaustion deeper than previous. As they made camp, he sat gazing across fields where ferns caught dusk and shimmered turquoise. He realized he had not dreamt of balefire in months, had not heard Heartfire's deep song as sharply. Not absence, but distance. As though a child grown no longer clutched parent's hand. He turned to Soria, voice soft. "Perhaps hearth no longer needs my tending." She poked ember of cooking fire, sending sparks rhythmically. "Fires always need story keepers," she said. But her eyes held understanding. They ate in silence, shared skin of fermented sky plum wine, watched skyglass and emberline coil around Silvicon on ridge ledge. Stars brightened. A comet with twin tails arced overhead, painting silver bruise across firmament. John felt unmistakable pull to west, not urgent, but insistent. "I think it is time to go home," he murmured. Marked down. And now? They returned by routes now familiar yet changed. Deserts blossoming. Marshlands dammed into mosaic farms. War-torn cities mending walls with shard glass mortar that shimmered rainbow. Wherever they passed, someone recognized them. Elder, child, dragon handler. Each bringing report. Heartflame towered higher. Archmages had coaxed seed stones to grow houses cooled from within. Lyanna's granddaughter Mira rode Night's Veil. First shadow dragon bred from skyglass clutch. Balance not perfect, greed flared, fear returned, but always tempered by memory of the hearth. Crossing the smoking sea, they saw wreck of iron dreadnought, half melted on a reef. Last attempt by some petty warlord to assault Heartflame. Dragons nested atop the wreck now, its rust turned fertile for salt plums. When city's pillars rose through haze, Joan's breath caught. Terraces he remembered were dwarfed by new rings where guardian statues stood sentinel, carved from basalt and living shard glass. Streams of molten silver were guided through troughs, powering wind wheels and cooling towers. Above all, Balefire's obsidian monument remained unchanged, though now a grove of shadow weirs circled its base, leaves whispering like hushed drums. Lyanna was gone, passed peacefully 3 winters prior, said a young archivist at Seagate, but her ashes fed the first weir sapling near Balefire. Mira, tall and earnest, greeted Jon at harbor while Night's Veil perched silent overhead. "Grandmother described light in your eyes," Mira said, touching her brow to Jon's forearm in Northman greeting. "I see it now." Soria embraced Mira, astonished at how much stark poise shone in the girl. Dragons crooned reunion, particularly Skyglass, now matriarch of her own small flight. Emberline flexed scarlet-tipped wings and caught scent of fertile mate in Vale's musk. Jon toured Heartflame. He hardly spoke, absorbing bustle. Children reciting runes of balance painted on mosaic benches. Merchants trading salt ice, preserved fish caught beyond shivering sea. Artisans forging sculpture lenses that scattered dusk into healing wavelengths for infirmaries. The city thrummed, not humbly, but harmoniously. At dusk he visited Ghost's Hill. The shadow weir now towered as tall as any pine, bark a swirl of gray and white. He laid palm to trunk. Pulse answered, not Heartfire, but something quieter, deeper. Roots had stretched to citadel base, entwined with furnace vents, shaping warmth across soil. Ghost lived on in structure of city. Mira joined him. Elders recorded dream you sent through root networks years back, guiding us to graft weirs with frost figged to resist volcanic pests. Did you intend? Jon shook head, soft chuckle. Dream travels where needed. He looked into horizon tinted by lava glow. I will not stay inside walls, but I think my path ends near. Then Chandero. They ascended Balefire's statue. At its apex Jon sat where stone wing met fused scale, gazing towards sea. Night's Veil landed behind, draping black-purple wing canopy, like twilight cloak. Mira crouched nearby, silent sentinel. Jon drew dawn ice. Blade radiated balance, but its pulse felt softer, as though waiting to sleep. He placed it across lap, palms resting on steel glass. He breathed in scent of orchard blossoms riding vent steam, exhaled across years. I was forged by Heartfire, he said to Mira, voice as rustling ember. But forging is process, not permanence. Steel returns to earth eventually, to feed next cycle. Mira's eyes shone with unshed tears. You are the beacon. The beacon stands, he interrupted gently, because many hearts stoke it. He touched her cheek. Your generation will tilt scales anew when needed. The time grows for me to join silence and teach by dream alone. Soria appeared, climbing final steps, braid ghosting her spine like pale comet tail. She knelt opposite Jon, frost steel spear laid before her. I will walk any last road. He smiled. The last road walks through us, Soria. You will guide Pearl Line. I will greet Balefire's memory. He closed eyes. Hearth within chest flickered, not extinguishing but contracting to ember. He envisioned original egg at Valyria's core, the gentle pulse after tempering. He allowed own pulse to align, then slowly diminish, relinquishing command. Dawn ice cooled, frost half-turning mist, ember half-turning aurora, blade smoldering, edges softening into formless brilliance. A tremor mild as cat's purr rippled through statue. Shard glass runes across city briefly glowed lavender. Dragons quieted, no fear, only reverence. The shadow weir's leaves rustled in breathless hush. Jon Snow exhaled one final time. Hearthfire slipped from bones, dancing across stone wing a swirl of sparks, coalescing into miniature aurora that drifted upward. It brushed Sylvacon's snout. Old dragon trilled lullaby taught by Pyralthor. Skyglass and Emberline echoed, chorus rising. Aurora ascended, merging with night sky, until indistinguishable among constellations. The wolves of memory howled in some far valley, snow-kissed highest parapet though it was midsummer night. Mira lowered head. Soria pressed her brow to dawn ice, now a bar of dull, inert crystal. She whispered, "Hearth rests, not ends." The next morning Heartflame awoke to dawn like any other, yet citizens sensed shift. Not loss, but subtle recalibration, as if city's pulse adjusted to fill place of flame withdrawn. Children born that day carried specks of silver in irises. They would grow to navigate shard glass currents with instinctive balance. Soria carried dawn ice to Balefire Grove, planted blade tip down beneath Shadow Weir. Roots quickly wrapped crystal, drawing dormant energy into living circuit. The blade dissolved over months, feeding bark veins that pulsed half frost, half ember. Scholars renamed Tree Twin Heart, emblem of harmony. Mira assumed stewardship as Warden of Balance, refusing titles of Queen. Her first decree: each year wandering seekers might petition City to guide them in balancing their distant lands, continuing Ash King's pact. A mosaic of John, cloak billowing, facing silhouette of flaming wolf, was set into grand plaza floor, not for worship, but for children to trace with chalk while learning stories. Sylvicon returned to Shivering Sea, escorting sky glasses clutched to ancestral spires. Soria watched from harbor, then sailed south to islands where ice lilies bloomed, spear guiding new riders. They said on calm nights her laughter still carried across tide like bells, promising arrival where silence grew hungry. Marked down, Imam Sal. Centuries cascaded. The world redrew itself thrice, continental drift exposing new archipelagos, starstone meteor showers, seeding sky with prism dust. Empires flowering from egalitarian city-states to cooperative federations of hearths. Technology mingled with magic. Skyships powered by furnace roots, healing houses where shard glass focused moonlight to speed marrow knitting. Heartflame remained fulcrum, not dominating, but quietly influencing with memory of balance. In the 10,000th turning of the Timeseed calendar, apprentices from Observatory discovered whisper anomalies. Cosmic currents buckling again, signal of imbalance on universal scale. Scholars gathered at Twin Heart's roots, seeking guidance. They pressed palms to bark and dreamt. In unified vision they found themselves on bridge of starlit scales arcing through void. At far end stood figure cloaked in aurora, face indistinct, yet eyes held wolf's unwavering calm. It spoke not with tongue but with hush that preceded flame and followed frost. Hearth kindled once more, where stars forget to choose. Walk the space between again. When apprentices woke, dawn and city seemed usual. Yet each felt ember frost pulse in veins. Twin Heart's leaves fell as flakes of crystal snow, spelling a rune none alive recognized but all felt. Balance eternal, keeper universal. And somewhere beyond mapped galaxies, perhaps where mind scarcely dared wander, spark of silver amber drifted, smiling at next journey.